You've been curious about the intersection of big tech and politics, specifically how Apple navigates this complex landscape. Today, we'll look at CEO Tim Cook's relationship with former President Donald Trump, exploring how personal connections intertwine with business goals in the global arena.
Yes, it's fascinating to see how these relationships play out, especially in an industry as influential as tech.
Absolutely. Let's start with something that caught your attention. Tim Cook's visits to Mar-a-Lago during Trump's presidency. What's the significance of these meetings, especially the dinners?
These meetings weren't just social gatherings, they were strategic moves by Cook to cultivate a relationship with Trump. It was well known that Trump valued direct communication and personal connections. Cook, by engaging directly, positioned Apple favorably compared to other tech giants who initially had more adversarial stances.
So it was about building a rapport. Now, what were some of the pressing issues likely discussed during these encounters? Apple wasn't exactly sailing smooth waters back then.
You're right. Apple was facing pressure from European regulators scrutinizing their App Store practices. There were hefty fines involved, which no company wants. Additionally, the potential for tariffs on Apple products manufactured in China was a major concern. These tariffs could have significantly increased the cost of Apple's products, impacting their bottom line and potentially even consumer prices.
That's a double whammy: regulatory headaches in Europe and potential economic blows from tariffs. How did Trump respond to Cook's concerns on these fronts?
Trump publicly expressed support for Apple regarding European regulation. He even went as far as to say during a podcast interview that he wouldn't let them take advantage of American companies. On the tariff front, Apple largely avoided them during Trump's presidency. It's hard to say definitively, but many believe this was a direct result of Cook's proactive relationship with Trump.
It seems like having a direct line to the president could be quite valuable. This makes me think about other tech leaders and their approach. How did Cook's strategy differ from others navigating the political landscape?
Cook was distinct in cultivating a relationship not just with Trump, but also with his family, including Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner early on. This was a savvy move as they held significant influence within the administration. Other tech giants like Meta and Amazon seemed to have a more reactive approach. They faced more public clashes with Trump and later resorted to measures like donating to Trump's inaugural fund, possibly to smooth over strained relationships.
So Cook played the long game while others were playing catch-up. That's insightful. This really highlights how different companies, even within the same industry, choose different paths in engaging with political figures.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. Each company must assess the political landscape and tailor its engagement strategy accordingly.
This brings us to a broader question. What does all this tell us about the challenges and strategies involved for a global company like Apple in navigating the often turbulent waters of politics?
It underscores the reality that for multinational corporations, personal relationships with political leaders can be incredibly advantageous. This is especially true when dealing with complex regulatory and economic issues that can directly impact a company's operations and profitability. It's a delicate dance. Companies need to balance their business interests with the political realities of different countries.
Speaking of different approaches, you mentioned some companies had a more reactive strategy. Can you elaborate on that? What did that look like in practice?
Sure. Meta, formerly Facebook, and Amazon, for example, seem to have more publicly strained relationships with the Trump administration. There were disagreements over issues like data privacy and antitrust regulations. These clashes likely created tension and potentially hindered their ability to effectively advocate for their interests.
So while Cook was building bridges, others were dealing with the fallout of public disagreements. What steps did these companies take to try and mend those relationships?
It seems they recognize the need for damage control. Both Meta and Amazon made donations to Trump's inaugural fund. These contributions could be interpreted as an attempt to rebuild rapport and gain favor with the administration after a period of public friction.
It's almost like they were playing catch-up, realizing that having a direct line of communication might have been beneficial from the start.
It's certainly a possibility. The tech industry thrives on innovation and being ahead of the curve. Perhaps in this case, some companies were a bit slower to adapt to the shifting political landscape.
That's a fascinating observation. It highlights how crucial it is for companies, especially in a globalized world, to be politically astute and adaptable.
Absolutely. The ability to anticipate and navigate political changes can be as vital to a company's success as its product development or marketing strategies.
Now, going back to Apple and Cook, what happened after the election? Did their relationship with the Trump administration change in any way?
Cook was among the many tech CEOs who sought to maintain a positive dialogue with Trump after his election. He posted congratulations on X, formerly Twitter, and expressed a desire to work with the administration to foster innovation and economic growth in the United States.
So it seemed like Cook was committed to preserving the relationship he had built, regardless of the election outcome.
Yes, it appears he understood the value of maintaining open communication channels, regardless of political affiliations.
Did their interactions continue beyond social media posts?
Yes. Cook held a meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago after the election. They later dined on the patio at Mar-a-Lago. This suggests that the established rapport continued and they were able to engage in a more personal setting.
That's interesting. While many relationships in Washington can be transactional, this suggests a level of genuine connection that transcends political differences.
It's true. And it speaks to Cook's ability to build trust and rapport with individuals, which can be a valuable asset in any business setting, particularly when navigating the complexities of government and politics.
It makes me wonder if this personal approach influenced their interactions during Trump's first term. How would you characterize their relationship during that time?
Their relationship was notably warm, much warmer than Trump's relationship with other tech executives like Meta's Mark Zuckerberg or Google's Sundar Pichai.
So even as other tech leaders were trying to mend fences, Cook was already several steps ahead, enjoying a more cordial relationship.
Precisely. He had laid the groundwork early on, and it seemed to pay off in terms of access and influence.
And it seems that other tech leaders eventually realized the importance of those personal connections. You mentioned that Zuckerberg and Pichai also had meals with Trump.
Yes, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos also met with Trump during his first term. It seems that other tech giants were taking a page from Cook's playbook, recognizing the value of direct engagement.
So in a way, Cook was a trendsetter, demonstrating the effectiveness of building personal relationships in the political sphere.
You could say that. His approach may have influenced how other tech leaders subsequently engaged with the administration.
And these other tech giants weren't just having dinners, were they? You mentioned earlier that Meta and Amazon made contributions to Trump's inaugural fund.
That's right. Those donations, while not uncommon in the world of politics, could be seen as a way to demonstrate goodwill and strengthen ties with the administration.
It seems like they were playing catch-up, trying to make up for lost time, and perhaps build the kind of rapport that Cook had already established.
It's certainly a plausible interpretation. Building strong relationships takes time and effort, and it's often more effective to start early rather than try to repair damage later on.
Going back to Cook and his relationship with the Trump administration, how did he go about building that rapport, especially in the early days?
Cook was strategic in his approach. He focused on building relationships with influential figures within the administration, starting with Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner. He would often call them to discuss policy matters and the potential implications of issues like tariffs on Apple.
So he recognized that building trust with those close to the president could be a valuable way to advocate for Apple's interests.
Exactly. It was a smart move, especially considering the influence Ivanka and Jared held within the White House.
It's a reminder that understanding the power dynamics within any organization, including government, is crucial for effective advocacy.
Absolutely. Knowing who to connect with and how to build relationships is essential for navigating complex political environments.
This raises an interesting question. Did this strategy need to change with the next administration, considering Ivanka and Jared were no longer part of the White House?
That's a great point. With the change in administration, Cook likely had to adapt his approach. Since neither Ivanka Trump nor Jared Kushner were involved in the upcoming administration, he may have had to forge new allies within the White House.
So it wasn't just about building relationships, but also about adapting to the evolving political landscape.
Exactly. Maintaining influence requires a keen understanding of political shifts and the ability to adjust strategies accordingly.
That must have presented a new set of challenges for Cook.
It certainly did. Building relationships takes time and effort, and having to start over with a new administration can be a daunting task.
Especially when dealing with issues critical to Apple's business, like manufacturing and trade.
Absolutely. These are complex areas that require deep knowledge and strong relationships with key decision makers.
So even with his success in navigating the previous administration, Cook couldn't rest on his laurels. He had to adapt and build new bridges to ensure Apple's continued success.
That's the nature of the political game. It's a constantly shifting landscape that requires agility, strategic thinking, and a willingness to build relationships across the political spectrum.
It's fascinating to see how the political landscape can shift so drastically and require leaders like Cook to constantly adapt their strategies.
Indeed. It highlights the dynamic nature of the relationship between business and politics, especially for global companies like Apple.
It makes me wonder what insights we can draw from Cook's experience. What can other business leaders learn from his approach to navigating political waters?
One key takeaway is the importance of building genuine relationships with political leaders and their advisors. It's not about transactional favors or short-term gains, but rather about fostering understanding and trust over time.
That makes sense. It's about cultivating a relationship where you can have open conversations and advocate for your company's interests effectively.
Precisely. It's about being proactive and engaging with policymakers to ensure they understand your business and its contributions to the economy and society.
And it's not just about building those relationships. It's also about maintaining them, especially when administrations change and you need to navigate new power dynamics.
Absolutely. Adaptability is key. Business leaders need to be able to adjust their approach and build new bridges as the political landscape evolves.
And perhaps most importantly, it's about recognizing that business and politics are intertwined. You can't ignore the political realities of the world, especially when operating on a global scale.
That's a crucial point. Business leaders need to be politically savvy and understand how political decisions can impact their operations. They need to be able to anticipate and adapt to those changes effectively.
It's a reminder that engaging with political leaders and policymakers isn't just a choice. It's a necessity for companies looking to thrive in today's complex world.
Indeed. It's about recognizing that business success isn't just about having a great product or service. It's also about understanding and navigating the political landscape in which you operate.
Thank you for sharing your insights on this complex and ever-evolving relationship between business and politics.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.